Hello, and welcome to the Biomass Magazine podcast. I am your host, Anna Simet, and for today's episode, I have on the line Scott Affelt of Expert Microsystems. Scott, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Anna. First of all, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to speak to your Biomass Magazine readers today.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get into questions, a little bit about Scott. He has co-led the business development and marketing strategy efforts of Expert Microsystems since 2016 and provides training and predictive model building services for customers. His prior roles include vice president at Zolo Technologies and president of Doosan Babcock Energy America. And he has over 30 years of energy-related experience. So Scott, let's begin by having you tell our listeners a little bit about Expert Microsystems and its business.
Sure, Anna. So Expert Microsystems is a software data analytics company. We started in 1996 by developing a solution for NASA to monitor the main engine in the space shuttle. Our flagship software platform, called SureSense, is a decision-centric virtual subject matter expert. It's built on machine learning and artificial intelligence data analytics to improve performance, availability, and the reliability of key equipment in asset-intensive industries. SureSense collects sensor measurements related to the equipment in real time and using machine learning algorithms learns the patterns between the various measurements. Then we monitor the values of these sensors in real time, typically 5 to 10 minutes, and evaluate if the measurements are either normal or abnormal given the context of the current operating conditions. This allows us to detect very small deviations much earlier than typically possible using standard trending techniques. Knowing that a potential issue is emerging at the earliest time allows plants to take corrective actions to avoid a bigger issue and plan better for outages and spare parts if necessary. Early identification allows users to avoid catastrophic failures by addressing the potential issues before any further collateral damage is done. Our SureSense platform also includes an automated diagnostic capability that uses artificial intelligence to determine the most likely cause of the issues or failures based on the combination of symptoms that are currently in a deviation state. This diagnostic is determined automatically in real time and is continually updated as new information is obtained. We call this our virtual subject matter expert, or virtual SME. Finally, we also have a prognostic feature that can forecast the remaining time to act before a user-set operating limit is reached. For example, if the vibration is higher than normal and is steadily increasing, how long before it reaches the limit at which the equipment will trip? We just recently had a customer with a pump seal leak at a nuclear plant use this feature to assist management in deciding if the unit could make it until an upcoming outage in September. Short-term corrective actions were taken to avoid an immediate outage and trip. Anna, back to you.
Really interesting stuff, Scott. So what industries use SureSense and what are their objectives and what about the benefits that they achieve?
Great question, Anna. So SureSense is currently being used to monitor over 70 gigawatts of power generation assets, but we also monitor several large refineries in the Middle East and India. We frequently detect sensor issues such as sensor drifting or stuck or failed sensors or even missing data. These are small catches, but obviously are important to address, especially if these sensors are being used for control purposes. However, most users experience a few large discoveries using SureSense that typically could avoid several $1 million of damages or repair. One utility customer with 20 gigawatts of power generation assets that uses SureSense to monitor their nuclear and combined cycle fleets just reported to their management that they saved or avoided over $8 million since their monitoring center was established 3 years ago using SureSense. A single failure avoidance, or even a few days of avoided outage, often pays the full cost of the monitoring activity. Another example involved an owner of a combined cycle plant. A small turbine vibration anomaly was detected, along with a small 5 megawatt loss in output. These kinds of small changes were not detected by the DCS or any other alarms. However, with the information from SureSense, the owner performed a bore scope over the weekend and discovered a damaged turbine blade. The turbine was subsequently repaired before further damage to the turbine, likely saving them about $5 million in catastrophic repairs. Beyond improving overall reliability and performance, the basic objective of most of our users is first, to avoid an unplanned outage, and secondly, gradually move to a more condition-based maintenance program where maintenance is performed when it's needed instead of at scheduled intervals. SureSense is used to continually monitor critical assets for both reliability and performance and can detect these small deviations from normal operation that alerts users of emerging issues. As mentioned earlier, this information can then be used to avoid unplanned outages and catastrophic failures and allows users time to properly plan and prepare for a repair or replacement. The condition-based maintenance approach has proven to reduce O&M costs versus the more traditional reactive or preventative maintenance strategies. This allows users to reduce their O&M resources and costs over time, and therefore improve their competitiveness without sacrificing reliability or availability. How does that sound, Anna?
Sounds great. So, what about specific to the biomass pellet production or RNG industries? How do you see SureSense being utilized in those spaces?
Yeah, that's also a good question. These kinds of plants face many of the same challenges as our power generation and refining plants. There's an increased focus on improving reliability, availability, and performance of these plants as well. Unplanned outages that can cause the plant to go down have direct costs with respect to either lost production of power or pellets, as an example. In addition, making repairs in an unplanned outage generally is much more expensive than making the same repairs during a planned outage. Furthermore, moving to a more condition-based maintenance program can lower the O&M costs at these plants by performing the maintenance only when it's needed. Small performance degradations can be detected earlier and therefore corrected before any significant impacts to productivity occur. Of course, there's always the benefit of increased safety that goes along with real-time monitoring, as we can detect any potential issues before they become bigger issues. Remote monitoring with SureSense can benefit biomass, pellet production, and renewable natural gas facilities in many of the same ways. These plants have many of the same types of equipment that we currently monitor at power generation refining plants, such as turbines, generators, pumps of various types and sizes, fans, heaters, mills, pulverizers or crushers, transformers, and compressors. We have experience monitoring all of these types of equipment. The SureSense platform is actually agnostic to the type of equipment, so it can be used to monitor any type of rotary or stationary equipment that has adequate data available. For equipment specific to these biomass applications, we can always work with the users to develop monitoring projects suited for their specific objectives and, of course, the sensor data that's available. Here's a couple of specific cases that might apply to biomass customers. On rotating equipment, monitoring bearing temperature and vibration data are two of the most important indicators of equipment health. Machine learning models can be trained to identify patterns in this data that suggest an impending failure. For example, a predictive model would identify a gradual increase in bearing temperatures of maybe 5 or 10 degrees that might indicate a bearing is starting to wear out. This will be much earlier than temperatures monitored with traditional DCS limits. There are also some very inexpensive wireless temperature and vibration sensors that can be installed in this kind of equipment if no current sensors are available. We currently monitor several different types of large compressors at refineries, which are likely similar to those used in the renewable natural gas production. These compressors can be prone to failures, and machine learning models can be used to monitor compressor performance and reliability and identify any early signs of wear and tear. This can help prevent compressor failures, which can lead to significant downtime. We can also integrate the most common failure modes and their symptoms right into the SureSense application using our virtual subject matter expert. This is a great way to capture and leverage the domain knowledge from the experts at these biomass plants or at headquarters. Then, if we see the combination of these symptoms while we're actively monitoring, SureSense will not only detect the deviations, but also provide some insights into the likely cause of the problem. This is especially important as more and more organizations are operating with fewer SMEs or operators. Back to you, Anna.
Thanks, Scott. Really interesting stuff and some great examples. So lastly, how do plant get started remote monitoring their assets? What type of information is required and what does the investment look like?
Well, first of all, any type of real-time monitoring solution using data analytics obviously needs data. We typically get our data from the plant historians in a time series format. However, we can also process data in offline CSV files if necessary. We have an assortment of data readers for data sources like OSI Pi or SQL databases, and even a generic OPC protocol. The SureSense software itself can be installed either at the user's site, the user's corporate network, or even the user's cloud. We have experience working on Azure and AWS as an example. This allows users to control their data as we never have to see it. They have total control of all of their data. As an alternative, we plan to offer a cloud-based subscription solution shortly for those customers that prefer that kind of an option. While SureSense can be used to monitor many plants and assets across a large fleet, it's also very well suited and economically viable for single plants or even targeted assets. Many users start with a single plant and may initially target specific assets that are the most critical or have high failure rates. Then the monitoring activity can be easily expanded to more assets and plants if necessary. There's no limit on the number of tags, sensors, equipment, or plants that can be monitored with SureSense. The SureSense team is often called in to assist in getting the initial monitoring projects created and deployed to accelerate implementation. The software is easy to use, and we offer extensive online training videos. Once the initial program is set up, users generally monitor the assets using our SureSense web dashboards, which focus the attention on only the potential issues. In most cases, the monitoring resources required are usually less than a few hours a week. Now, the investment needed to begin a remote monitoring program, of course, depends on the number of assets and plants that you plan to monitor. However, with SureSense, a single plant can be monitored starting at about $50,000 a year. This allows a viable solution even for a single plant. A single outage avoidance or equipment failure prevented will cover the cost of the SureSense monitoring program. So there you go, Anna. I thank you for the opportunity to discuss our SureSense platform and how it might apply to your biomass readers. If any of the listeners are interested in learning more about SureSense, please feel free to contact me directly.
Thanks so much, Scott. It's been super interesting, really informative. So with that, I just want to thank you so much for coming on and telling us more about Expert Microsystems.
It was my pleasure. I was glad to help. And we certainly feel there's an opportunity for the SureSense application to provide some value to your biomass readers.
Absolutely. And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Until next time.